Welcome back. You're still watching the Prime Edition. Time for us now to get into a conversation. And as I had told you earlier, we'll be speaking to Dr. Kennedy Chelule. He's the CEO, Special Economic Zones Authority. And I'm sure much of what you've heard is economic, that is the EPZs. That is what Kenyans are really used to. But then again, today we draw the differences. Is there a difference between EPZs and SEZs? And he's here to speak about that. Dr. Kennedy Chelule, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, John, and thank you to the viewers.
Karibu sana. Let's begin with defining the mandate or the scope of the Special Economic Zones Authority. What is your mandate?
Thank you, John. So Special Economic Zones Authority is a fairly new organization. We are 7 years old. Our mandate is dual. First is to undertake regulations of all special economic zones, and we develop and manage public special economic zones. Currently, we have 2, and we are developing 1 as we speak.
What is the difference? Because for the Kenyans watching out there, the special economic zones and economic processing zones, what is the difference?
Yeah, I know out there there's a lot of confusion, and that's why we are here. We want to make sure that we tell the public, we tell Kenyans what is it, so that of course they can make, in case of investment, they can make their own decision. But in brief, the 2 programs are nearly similar. We're both export-oriented. The big difference is in the local market access. The export processing zone generally allows 20% of its goods to enter into the local market, that's the Kenyan market. While the Special Economic Zones Authority goods can access the local market 100%. Okay? As I've said, both are export-oriented, so the difference is the local market. One other major difference is in terms of the kind of taxes in form of corporate tax. So in the first 10 years, EPZ charges 0. And then in the next 10 years, 25. After 20 years, is 30%. In our case, special economic zones, we do the first 10 years is 10%, followed by the next 10 years, which is 15%. Thereafter, we, just like EPZ, we are 30%. So those are the 2 big differences, really, but the rest are fairly the same.
Obviously, every administration that comes into power is confronted with the question of improving the economy and how that will be improved.
Yes.
When we talk about special economic zones, and of course the fact that it has existed for 7 years, that means it's important in the scope of government development. Is Kenya ready for a takeoff then? Is it probably the silver bullet for Kenya's economic prosperity if it is actualized?
Let me give you specific examples to demonstrate how it's been done elsewhere. Today, as we speak, China has 7 special economic zones broadly. Their contribution to GDP is 22%. Those zones create 30 million jobs. Okay? Now, in other jurisdictions, for example, UAE, it is 20%. Okay? In Morocco, local here, it's over 10%. So around the world, Special Economic Zone Program has been a mechanism, an instrument used to accelerate industrialization, creating jobs in exchange for incentives. Of course, the investors are given good incentives, and the incentives across the world tend to vary, but they are nearly similar. It's all about corporation tax, IDF, import duties and all those. So countries are playing. And sometimes there's even an argument of how far down can we go in terms of doing exemption, because countries seem to be running their taxes down for purposes of attracting some of the best investors around the world. But obviously, each country offers a different competitive advantage, of which Kenya, surely we have a lot of competitive advantage.
And we'll talk about the incentives in a bit, but I'm just wondering, if in Dubai or China, there's more than 20% of its GDP consisting of, or coming from special economic zones, why aren't ours, operating optimally to the extent of 20%? And as you do that, tell us how much our SEZs are contributing. Of course, it's a fairly new program.
Absolutely, you're right. Now, as I've said, we are a fairly new program, so we are a greenfield. Most of our zones are currently under development. In fact, majority of our special economic zones have recently been gazetted. Some are going through the process of getting licenses. The process of getting an SEZ is that you get a gazettement, followed by a licensing, and then you bring in the investors who will then get enterprise license. So many of our zones are currently in the development stage. Hence the reason why the contribution is still low, because the zones are not ready for onboarding of investors in the numbers we want. For example, you can see our flagship, the leading SEZ is Tatu City. We have Nairobi Gate here in Nairobi and Compact FTZ. Most of the others are fairly green. They are putting in the basic infrastructure, the roads, the water, electricity, and other basic horizontal infrastructure. However, there is a promising future. In fact, in the next probably 5 to 10 years, you will see a difference that SEZ can do to this country in terms of particularly jobs, technologies, and the kind of products. Because our zones also are intended, if you look at the Vision 2030, to create a globally competitive companies or investment where our investors can sell their products globally.
How many SEZs do we have in Kenya? And for the benefit of the viewer, when I say SEZs, is special economic zones. How many do we have in Kenya? And probably as you do that, you can classify them into public and private.
So currently, we have a total of 28 special economic zones. Okay, 4 of those zones are public. This is Konza City. Okay. We've got Naivasha special economic zones. We've got Ndogokundu special economic zones, and there is the first county to be licensed was Mombasa Industrial Park. Okay, there are 24 privately run special economic zones, and there are a few more coming up soon.
I was just wondering because listening to some of these private special economic zones and the potential therein, that one projects to employ 20,000 by next year. That is 20,000 young people. What is your projection? Because you've told us 5 to 10 years things will be different. What is your projection? The number of jobs that will be created probably in the next 5 to 10 years, and what age group are we looking at?
Again, it is also good to practice. It's good for Kenyans to know these are very practical investment. And I want to give an example of a company called CCI based in Tatu City. We only licensed them about 3 or 4 months ago. As we speak today, they have created 1,000 jobs. It's under business processing outsourcing. Those 1,000 jobs are mainly focused on age group around 23 years. So you can see the same company is promising that by next year they will have gone to 5,000. Okay, so the potential is there. It's a massive employer. What we need at this stage is really to create the right environment, provide right infrastructure. Okay, we want to position this country as an environment for heavy industries on one side, value addition in terms of agri-processing and other natural resources, and logistics, as well as in the services. And a good example of a service industry is the one I've just mentioned, CCI in Tatu City.
You were mentioning incentives, Ari, before in the interview, and was just wondering, what makes Kenya the go-to place? Because as you speak tonight, there are investors watching, just in the Republic, but even out there. What are these incentives that make Kenya the go-to place when you think about investment, and particularly in special economic zones?
Now, I have to say this, Kenya government, and especially the current government, has done a lot in terms of trying to create the necessary enabling environment. The incentives are in 2 forms. There is the fiscal incentive and the administrative. let me start with the administrative. So we want to create an environment whereby we have one-stop shop where an investor can come in. They are facilitated in terms of starting a business, registering, getting tax compliance. If they need NEMA, they are facilitated within the facility, Kenya Power. So you have all government agencies in one place, so that an investor doesn't have to move around the city looking for these offices, because they are available within the zone or within our offices. Currently, if you visit KenInvest, we have a one-stop. We are now redubbing, we are recalling, we've changed the name. It is one start, one stop. You go into KenInvest to start your business, and by the end of it, you will stop here because you'll have gotten all the permits and licenses required. So that's what we are doing on one side in terms of administrative incentives. Now, in terms of fiscal, so government has created a number of, made a number of tax rebates to these companies. For example, as I've mentioned, corporation tax, as you know, is preferential. Many of other taxes, such as IDF, import, stamp duty, they are all exempt. We also have other incentives that are not necessarily fiscal. For example, today as we speak, the energy for SEZ has been gazetted as, if you are in Naivasha, you can enjoy an energy rate of 5 shillings per kilowatt hour. Outside Naivasha, and for obvious reason because of power losses, you enjoy 10 shillings per kilowatt hour. So there are all a raft of incentives ranging from administrative, physical, and others, for purposes of making these investors comfortable to create jobs for us, bring in technology, as well as attract foreign investment that also generate inflow of foreign currency.
You talk about, one start, one stop, and I'm sure at some point we'll talk about some of the legal changes that you seek to your parent act. But even before we get there, there's the big question of what draws away investors from the country, and one of them is multi-licensing. How are you planning to deal with that as a Special Economic Zones Authority? So much so that even as you talk about one start, one stop, that the issue of multi-licensing does not discourage investors from investing in the Special Economic Zones.
Sure. And the drafters of the current act of the Special Economic Zone, I think, had a good sight of bearing in mind that kind of environment. That's why under our act, that is, as he said, act, we operate under one license. So the involvement of many other agencies is limited. In fact, if you look at it this way, the counties, apart from having a say in the planning of the zone, beyond there, the role is limited. Other government agencies, other than the mandatory ones, such as the National Environmental Management Authority, National Construction, those are the few that have a say in how the zone is run, how the enterprise is run. So the idea was, let's have these people have a smooth way of doing their business, facilitating them in that way, so that okay, let me change the conversation this way. We are competing globally. FDIs looking for opportunities, whether it's USA, whether it's China, whether it's Dubai, whether it's Kenya, whether it's Morocco. So the idea is, are you in a position to compel them to come to this country? And if so, then get rid of this potential obstacle to investing in this country. Hence the reason why there have been the country has taken this position that let's have one license, for example. Let us minimize the licenses that would be required, or fees or permits that would be required, just for purposes of making sure that we are in a position where we can compete globally to attract the best investors to come to this country.
You talk about competing globally. Good and interesting one. And President William Ruto has really been outspoken about what special economic zones, what he's calling the CAIPs, that is the county aggregation and industrial parks, the potential therein. But I'm just wondering, when it comes to the continental ranking or the global ranking, how is Kenya doing in terms of its special economic zones?
First, I have to thank His Excellency the President for he has been a good ambassador for special economic zones. I can tell you, recently we were in Morocco, and it was we were really pleasantly surprised that the effort by His Excellency the President is being recognized continentally. We had gone there to seek membership of the organization, the continental body, African Economic Zones Organization, and we were given we competed with a few countries. We were voted overwhelmingly as a member, and beyond that, we were even put into the organizing, the steering committee. As a country, our program is doing well. We could be in a green, we are still in the development stage, but continentally, we're being recognized. Let me start with the region. We've been developing policies. We've recently passed the Council of Ministers in the East Africa have passed the East African SEZ policy. And that program, with the support of partners, such as the JICA and a few others, we've been able to influence the development of special economic zone policies in the East Africa. Now, that opportunity to go into the continental also give us another opportunity to influence. You've also seen the U.S. ambassador. He's been a passionate supporter of our program. So globally, I think we're getting somewhere. We may not play at the global level, but certainly within the region in Africa, we are doing well. We expect within the next 3, 4, 5 years that our economic zone will be realized in terms of its performance. We will see the numbers in terms of jobs. We'll also see the level of export into the global market.
You make a mention of Kenya now becoming a member of a steering committee for the African Economic Zones Organization. I'm just wondering from where Kenya sits, what is the import of it being a member of that steering committee?
The import, are you asking for the importance?
Yes.
Oh, yes. There's a saying that if you are not on the table, and then you have no say, isn't it, or something, there's a saying like that. But I want to put it this way. As I've said, in terms of, Africa has a population of 1.3 billion people. Our GDP is around $3.4 trillion. It's a huge market. Kenya must play a role in that. We are positioning SEZ to play in that league. Okay? Why? Because it gives us unprecedented access beyond what we already have in terms of selling to Europe and other places. So we have also had a competitive advantage. As a country, we lie strategically within the continent and across the world. And I want to give this example. At 7 in the morning, when we wake up, it is 8 a.m. or thereabouts in Japan. So our interaction with Japan is about, by the time from 2 p.m. in Japan up to 5, that's around 4 or 5 hours. So we'll have interacted with Kenya, and Japan will have interacted with that part of the world. By the time it's 2 p.m. or 1 p.m. in Kenya, it is around 7 a.m. in the USA. So we have around 5 hours to interact with USA. So being our country is geostrategically positioned, especially in sectors such as the business processing outsourcing, to be able to serve that Far East market about 5 hours, and 5 hours again after 2 p.m. with the Western world, particularly the USA. So therefore, and with a good population which is well educated, 82%, in terms of retooling them to be able to serve this market is easy. You know, Kenya is fairly educated, our numbers are good, and I see a situation where we can replicate what the likes of Philippines, Vietnam are doing to the rest of the world. The business processing outsourcing in Vietnam, those countries, is doing well. India the same. With a good understanding of English, soon we'll be competing with those kind of countries.
Interesting. I have about 1 minute before we wind up in a quick one, because most of the times government communication falls through the cracks because of the failure in terms of civic education and constant communication about what people are doing. And the special economic zones authority to a larger extent probably is known by investors. But there are opportunities existing for the normal Kenyan watching out there, but doesn't know that they do exist. What is your strategic plan probably in the coming 2-3 years in terms of ensuring that Kenyans know what is happening?
Thank you, John. That is a very important, and that is the very reason why I'm here.
Yes.
First, let me say what opportunities are available for Kenyans. Kenya is endowed with natural resources, with agri-resources. Government of Kenya, during this financial year, the Financial Act of 2023 has made some amendment to allow for integration between the zone and the resources. So our investors can now easily buy raw material, process in the zone, and be able to sell it back if need be. But obviously we are encouraging them to sell outward. Okay? So that is the first point where Kenyan can get an opportunity. In terms of communicating what we do, communicating our program, we are now engaging people such as yourself, the Fourth Estate. This is my first time actually in the studio, and it will not be the last. And I hope we will work together to see to it that we bring this program to the wider public. There are plenty of opportunities. I would encourage Kenyans to participate, to invest in the special economic zone, because it's the future, and the world has gone into this direction.
Absolutely. Dr. Kennedy Chelule is the CEO, the Special Economic Zones Authority in Kenya. Thank you very much, sir, for your time this evening, and thank you again for explaining to us and breaking down the opportunities that do exist, and we wish you all the best as you continue discharging your mandate as the Caesar. Asante sana.
Thank you.
So we put a cap on Prime Edition. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. God bless you. Have yourself a fantastic night ahead.